Coming up, Putin's claim to withdraw from the Ukrainian border.
We will also be diving into new COVID-19 policies in Boston and on the Emerson campus.
Also, we're going to have an incredible performance from new singer-songwriter Serge Alex. All that and much more today, Wednesday, February 16th. And good morning, Emerson. I'm Wesley Days. Thank you so much for joining us on a Wednesday morning.
And I'm Madison Goldberg. We start off this morning with an update from the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced withdrawing some troops from the Ukrainian border. Putin also expressed that he was open to further discussing the situation with Western countries. However, U.S. President Joe Biden, NATO, and the Ukraine have said that it is too early to tell if de-escalation is still a possibility. President Biden addressed the crisis on Tuesday afternoon.
Two paths are still open. For the sake of historic responsibility, Russia and the United States share for global stability, for the sake of our common future, to choose diplomacy. But let there be no doubt, if Russia commits this breach by invading Ukraine, responsible nations around the world will not hesitate to respond.
And Governor Charlie Baker has decided to allocate another $100 million towards battling the COVID-19 pandemic. On Saturday, Baker signed a new spending bill that includes more than $76 million, helping to broaden Massachusetts residents' access to vaccines, masks, and testing. The bill also grants the state $25 million in federal funds, serving to boost the Massachusetts Emergency Sick Leave Program. The policy set September 6th as the official date for the Commonwealth's primary election. The governor revised an earlier version of the bill after state lawmakers requested a plan to eliminate vaccination disparities in the next 120 days.
And Massachusetts loosened its mask requirements amid high vaccination rates and a significant drop in COVID-19 cases. The MDPH suggests that fully vaccinated individuals who are immunocompromised or live with someone who is continue to wear masks in all public indoor spaces. Masks will remain a requirement in healthcare facilities and on public transportation, but the organization also maintains that everyone follow the quarantine protocol should they test positive. This includes wearing a mask in public for 5 days following the isolation period. For more on the mask mandate, Good Morning Emerson correspondent Claire Overton is at the scene discussing the new policies for schools K through 12. Claire?
Governor Charlie Baker announced the mask mandate will no longer be in effect for K through 12 schools as of February 28th. This leaves the decision up to individual school districts whether they'll uphold the mandate further.
Our Boston Public Health Commission has determined that we need to see consistent downward trend of these numbers so that we are not just kind of dipping above and below and above and below.
School nurse Kelly Binchuk agrees with Michelle Wu that masks should stay on in the classrooms.
I mean, we're still currently in the red zone, and we still have a lot of children that are not vaccinated, especially at my school, those 5 to 11-year-olds and then all the littles.
Masks will remain required on school buses after the in-building mandate expires, and school testing programs the state has supported will also remain in place to continue monitoring for possible COVID-19 cases. Another parent who is dropping his kids off said masks should be dropped in phases.
As far as the mandate, I feel that it should be lifted. However, it should be done in phases. The government has to plan it and how they can just taper it down in phases. But I feel that it is time that we can ask our children to, remove it. And things are pretty much in control now.
Schools with at least 80% vaccination rate among students and staff are still allowed to drop the mandate. Reporting for Emerson Channel, I'm Claire Overton.
Claire, thanks so much. 106 passengers from Boston were stranded in New York after a local Amtrak train headed to D.C. lost power. The train left Boston around 5 in the morning and shut off approximately 3 hours later at 8:30 in Queens. The train began to move again nearly 7 hours later thanks to a rescue engine. Travelers then transferred trains to reach D.C. safely.
And the families of 9 victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting have reached a $73 million settlement with gunmaker Remington. A weapon made by the company was used in the tragic mass shooting a decade ago in 2012, where 20 children and 6 educators were killed. Remington has also agreed to allow the families to release any documents on the AR-15 manufactured by the company, including the dangerous marketing. Veronique de la Rosa, the mother of 6-year-old victim Noah Posner, spoke on the matter.
Today is a day of accountability for an industry that has thus far enjoyed operating with immunity and impunity.
Now an alert for local Boston residents. 2 Emerson College students were robbed in the Boston Common. The police reported that the 6 suspected robbers followed the 2 students a little while before threatening them with pistols. The robbers took an iPhone, AirPods, college IDs, and keys. Emerson police officials sent an email warning all students. The Boston Police Department is launching an investigation into the incident. To further maintain the safety of its students, Emerson also updated its COVID policies. Josh Fergang has more.
I'm standing here on Harrison Ave at the Tufts Testing Center, talking to Associate Vice President for Campus Life, Eric Mursep, about the recent Emerson COVID protocol changes. Eric Mursep serves as both the Associate Vice President of Campus Life as well as the unofficial COVID lead, supervising COVID policies and safety regulations for staff and students. The decision to reduce the testing requirement has come after a marked decrease in on-campus positives. As of this morning, there are 0 students in quarantine and only 5 in isolation.
I think the most recent drop in cases we're seeing is a combination of a lot of things. So we know nationwide and regionally, Omicron surge is decreasing. I think it's because, once again, the Emerson community has come together, has followed our protocols that we've put in place.
Recently, Emerson has amended several of their COVID policies. Students are now only required to test once a week instead of the usual 2 tests. In addition, off-campus students are now allowed to enter Emerson residential buildings, and even non-Emerson students can now have access to academic buildings.
Certainly our goal would be that we ease up some more restrictions. I would love to be able to get more people into the residence halls. We know that that is a huge sacrifice, and it's just something that we did not take lightly. And so our goal as a COVID team, and certainly my goal as an individual, is to make sure that we can get back to that as soon as it is safe. And certainly I hope we could do that this semester in the spring.
College officials still recommend that Emerson students quarantine or isolate if they are feeling sick or are a known contact of a confirmed case of COVID-19. That's all I have for you today. For Good Morning Emerson, I'm Josh Fergang. Back to the studio.
And in more Emerson news, a pause in the Presidential Search Committee. Our political correspondent Maximo Lawler is here to tell us what this means. Maximo?
Madison, right here at Emerson, the presidential search put on pause this week. This means interim President William Gilligan stays in this role until June of next year. Now, the search committee's chair is sending a letter to the Emerson community Monday. It says the committee and board of trustees both agree it's more important for the college to focus on immediate needs. This decision comes after multiple candidates have already been interviewed for this position. The search for a new president began in 2020 when former President Lee Pelton announced he would be the new president of CEO of the Boston Foundation. It is now unsure when the search for Emerson's next president will resume.
And Maximo, this comes right as Emerson College Senior Associate Vice President of Human Resources has announced that she's also leaving her position.
Right, exactly. So Sherry Steyer announced this morning that she will serve as Chief People Officer at Fenway Health. This is a healthcare center which delivers accessible care and services to marginalized groups, including the LGBTQ+ and BIPOC communities.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, what else do you have for us in politics this week?
Boston police are removing more than 600 names from a gang database. A letter from Boston's police interim commissioner says these names were all deemed inactive in their system. The counselors and civil rights leaders have been advocating for this database to be revised for years now. And even a recent court order also pointing out the database's flaws, specifically its reliance on a point system that's based off inferences of people. More than 3,000 names are still on that list, and nearly 60 were added last month. The Massachusetts State House is set to open its doors this next week to the public. State House has been closed for nearly 2 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Massachusetts is the last state in the continental U.S. to keep their capitol closed from the public. People wanting to come inside now must show proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within the last 24 hours, and masks are also required. Currently, the State House is only open, though, to accredited journalists, lawmakers, state officials, and staff.
Well, that's really interesting, Maximo. Thank you so much for that. We are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to hear from the new candidate for Secretary of State, Tanisha Sullivan. We'll be right back. You're watching Good Morning Emerson. Welcome back to Good Morning Emerson. Today we welcome Boston NAACP President and candidate Secretary of State in the upcoming election, Tanisha Sullivan. Tanisha, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Tanisha. And now you have such an extensive career in advocacy and law, and now you're running for Secretary of the Commonwealth. Can you tell us a little bit more about what your campaign goals are?
Absolutely. Again, I'm excited to be here with you all this morning. And at this moment in our democracy, with all that's going on across our country and here in Massachusetts, when people are, confused, disappointed, becoming more disengaged with our democracy, I believe that it is critically important for the Secretary of State's office to be more of a champion in the advancement of voting rights. The Secretary of State's office is the chief elections officer here in Massachusetts, and so voting rights and the advancement of voting rights should be a cornerstone of the work that comes out of that office. It needs to be more than just stated support. It needs to be active engagement and active advancement. The Secretary of State's office is the chief information office here in the Commonwealth, and so it has oversight responsibility for our public records. I believe that we should be the most transparent government in the country. Currently, we are number 47 in transparency across our country. So I believe we've got work to do to increase transparency, but even more than that, it's not enough for people to have access to information. If we are going to be a vibrant democracy, we need access to information and we need supports in place to ensure that we all know how to use the information. So that government isn't something that's happening to us, but that government is something that's happening with us. That we the people, are truly the drivers of our democracy. And the last piece is that I'll share today, there's so much to talk about in this space, is that the Secretary of State's office is what I like to call the Chief Corporations Office. Because if you want to do business in Massachusetts, you got to go through the Secretary of State's office. And so there too, I believe that there's modernizing that needs to happen. There's more engagement that can happen to help ensure that at a time when many of us, right, we're starting businesses earlier, starting, in dorm rooms, in our homes, that the Secretary of State's office is a place where we can get support.
So you spoke a bit about some of the changes that you hope to see on the state government level. So our current Secretary of State, William F. Galvin, has announced that he is running for re-election after a pretty lengthy term. Now, as a lifelong resident and a community member that has served in the Boston area, what can you add as Secretary of State that you think was possibly missing from your opponent's previous administration?
Yeah, I think it is about transforming this office from being one that is transactional in nature, administrative in nature, into one that is meeting the moments of 2022 and is preparing us for the next era in our democracy. And that is going to require that the office become less transactional and more engaged with our community. This office, as we become an increasingly more diverse Commonwealth, as we become a Commonwealth that, from a geographic standpoint, people are moving out of the urban cores and into other parts of the Commonwealth, the office has to be a connector between our residents and our government.
Definitely. And so before we let you go today, Tanisha, the NAACP is in the news for local reasons, for you, and then also on the national level as well. Sherilyn Ifill, the director of the NAACP's Legal Defense Program, has been shortlisted as a potential Supreme Court nominee to replace retiring Justice Stephen Breyer. How important and beneficial do you think it would be for a second former NAACP official, first was Thurgood Marshall, of course, to sit on the bench of the Supreme Court?
I think, look, Sherilyn Ifill is a brilliant attorney, a fierce civil rights leader. And, she, along with several other, women, Black women who have been mentioned as potential nominees, would do our nation proud. And certainly, when we talk about Sherlyn Ifill, she would be carrying forward not just the legacy of Thurgood Marshall, but also the legacy of Constance Baker Motley, who did not herself ascend to the Supreme Court, but was definitely instrumental in helping Thurgood Marshall be positioned to be there. I have to say that, one, because it's true, but also because we are celebrating Black History Month, and Women's History Month is right around the corner. So it's important to remember the women who have been able to help in the advancement of civil rights as well.
Thank you so much, Ms. Sullivan. And speaking of Black History Month, an initiative to help support Black-owned restaurants in the city of Boston has entered its 5th year. Good Morning Emerson correspondent Danny Shojai has more on the story.
The Boston Black Restaurant Challenge has kicked off for the 5th year in a row this month. So I'm here at Larry J's Barbecue in South Boston to talk about the initiative and the life-changing barbecue experience that they offer. Since 2018, in celebration of Black History Month, the Boston Black Restaurant Challenge has encouraged residents and visitors to support Boston's Black-owned establishments.
Just come out and support small businesses, whatever race they are. But for the Black-owned businesses, there's so few and far in between in this city. So drawing attention to that is a positive for everybody.
Larry J's is one of only 2 Black-owned businesses in Seaport. But despite challenges, they still make some of the best barbecue in town.
Low and slow, that's the only way you're gonna do barbecue. Barbecue is not grilling. Barbecue is not putting chicken in the oven and then put barbecue sauce on afterwards. That's not barbecue. Barbecue is a smoke process. It's slow and easy, wood-driven, heat, time and temperature. And that's what you get, really quality barbecue. We make the best brisket in Boston, period, hands down, done deal. Best. Out of anybody that has a barbecue place, sorry, we're it.
Now more than ever, it's an important time to give back to the community. And this is a really tasty way to do it. For Good Morning Emerson, I'm Danielle Sojai. Back to you.
Danny, thanks so much. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we're going to have the latest in the Winter Olympic scandal. You're watching Good Morning Emerson. And welcome back to Good Morning Emerson. Let's go to Jackson Tolliver for the latest in sports. Jackson, good morning to you.
Thanks, Wesley. The Winter Olympics are well underway, and the top story this week is about an Olympian who isn't even old enough to drive a car. 15-year-old Russian figure skater Kamila Valieva tested positive for a banned substance last week, leading many to believe that it was the end of her short-lived but impressive career. However, Valieva was cleared to continue competing on Monday, leaving many fellow competitors angered. Russia is already banned from international sports for 2 years due to another doping scandal. Athletes are currently competing under the Russian Olympic Committee instead of Russia. The International Olympic Committee announced that while Valieva can still compete, she and her fellow competitors will not receive any medals during the investigation. Valieva is currently leading the women's short program, but the teenager may never get her gold. The Boston Celtics made some noise last Thursday at the NBA trade deadline. The Celtics, who have now won 9 games in a row, acquired former Spurs guard Derek White and reacquired a fan favorite, Daniel Tice, from the Houston Rockets. Derek White, in his 5th season in the NBA, is a consistent three-point shooter for a Celtics offense that has struggled at times from range. He is also an elite-level defender, pairing well with longtime Celtics guard Marcus Smart. Daniel Tice began his career with the Celtics in 2017, but was traded away at last year's deadline. Being back on the team where Tice began his NBA journey brings familiarity and excitement. His strong defensive skills also add a spark to the Celtics bench. In more local news, the Emerson men's basketball team has won 3 straight games as they look to make a playoff run. The Lions, currently 3rd in the NEWMAC Conference, have had a noteworthy year, with seniors Zach Waterhouse and Jared Houston each reaching 1,000 career points. I spoke to Jared last night, who told me, quote, "Our roster is really deep, from our starters to the bench to the guys that don't necessarily pop up on the box score. Everyone has done a great job coming in and pushing one another to be the best that we possibly can." The Lions will play at MIT tonight at the Bobby Brown and Stephen Plofker Gym. and then close out their regular season with another home game Saturday against Wheaton. The playoffs will begin next week. Congratulations, Lions. Now back to you guys.
Well, thanks so much. We're now joined by Emerson College student and singer and songwriter Serge Alex. So thank you for coming. Thank you for waking up at 7:45 this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
This
having me.
is a big time for you. This is a big day.
Yes, it is.
This is. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about your music. Let's talk about the creative and direction and the style that it's gone in. What do you think? How do you think you got to this point as a singer? Like, what is driving you?
Me is like living my life and just creating experiences and having music as an outlet to express myself. Because I find myself sometimes having it difficult to like explain to someone how it was going through my head or like what actually like I'm feeling. So like, when I write it down in music, it's like I put it there. It's like my diary, like what Alicia Keys said, and just put it all there. And like, if you resonate with it, you resonate. If you don't, you don't. But what just keeps me going is just the fact that people like it, and I feel good when I do it, and yeah.
Well, you have a lot of big fans here today, I have to tell you.
Oh,
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your musical journey and what kind of got you into performing in the first place?
Yes. So I did this summer program with my best friend Taylor in like 2016, and like it kind of practically gave me like the equipment and the tools to like learn how to songwrite and like practice my music skills more. And I like started writing music about like social justice and just like topics they wanted me to write about. So I was like, okay, cool, this is fine. But I realized that after that program, I was able to create content based off of just like, I'm like, okay, I have free will now. I can do whatever I want.
And I want to harp on something you just said, which was it's kind of like a personal reflection for you. A lot of these things are things that you're going on right now. Like I'm thinking of someone else like Mary J. Blige who talks about that, where she says that her music is her diary almost. What about this song you're performing today, Not With You? Let's talk about it. What is that about? It was
the last song I created when it was like the most recent song I created and the fastest song I created when I was in LA. I already had the beat ready. Like it was like a draft of the beat made. I finished it when I was there. After I was thinking about like my life when I was living over there, and I was like, I'm at a good peak. I should not let like other energies try to come in and like ruin it for me in a sense.
So yes, let's talk more about your EP. Tell us a little bit more about what went into the creative process of this project.
So the creative process, it actually like highlights, well, the music I'm creating now does not really replicate the music that's on this EP now, but this era was like really important, not really important, but like a highlight, obviously because it's my project, but it was like right in the moment where we got kicked out for COVID to like up in the summer, last summer, and it was just all my experiences and all the stuff I want to talk about. Like I remember during quarantine, I was like writing a lot of music just back to back just because I wanted to practice like exercise like my abilities.
So the EP name, can we share it today?
Yes,
is that why we're here?
It, yeah.
Okay, so Serge's new EP, which is out March 18th. Is that correct?
Yes.
March 18th. So
yes.
Everyone mark your calendars right now. Will be out. It's called Sweet Temptation. Sweet Temptations. And it's going to be on all streaming platforms. So wherever you get your music, Spotify, Apple Music, any of those places you can get the EP.
I'm also releasing a single before the EP too on March 4th. It's called Venus, and it features one of my close friends and local Boston rapper, Black Velma, and she's so talented, and I can't wait for y'all to hear it.
How important is it to support and raise awareness about local Boston acts in the area, especially here at Emerson, because there's so many?
Absolutely.
Right. It is so important because I feel like we all, like, cause I like to support my local artists and my local friends. Like, for example, like the people that was behind like the cover of it, like Johnny Ford, Hannah Jamal, Taylor Dixon, like they all like, I feel like collaborating is like so important, and I feel like it shouldn't be like a competition. Cause I know a lot of people take like, okay, I'm trying to get to the top first, I'm trying to make it out, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like if we were all working together, we could all like get it in and all get to that goal together, and a lot of stuff can come out, honestly, from doing it. So
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Serge, and you can all stay tuned to hear Serge perform his single, Not With You, up next. Welcome back to Good Morning Emerson.
Serge Alex is here to sing his new song, Not With You. Serge, take it away.
You're such a fan of me, 'cause by the way I see you in love with me, I guess I'm your remedy. You fall for me, but you don't see. If you make this move, it ain't for free. And I can tell I'm not your type. And something here just ain't right. 'Cause I've been working so hard. I've been feeling myself. I've been on the road now. Not you about to help me out here. 'Cause I'm protecting. I know where I should be. You know you're toxic, babe. A waste of time here, baby. And honestly, I have time to stay. Rendezvous, the thought of me on you. If I make this move, then I'm a fool. You know this gon' mess me up, yeah. Yeah, I wish my soul best of luck. 'Cause I've been working so hard. I've been feeling, I've been on the road now. Not you about to have me out here crazy. I'm protecting my peace. I know where I should be. 'Cause I've been working so hard. I've been feeling myself. I've been on the road now. Not you about to have me out here crazy. I'm protecting my peace. I know where I should be. Yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You mess this up if you mess me up. That'll be your head, and I'll leave you dead.
That was fantastic. Serge's new EP, Sweet Temptations, is out March 18th, and it's going to be on all streaming platforms, wherever you get your music.
Thank you so much for waking up with us. You can catch us next Wednesday.
Have a great Wednesday, everyone.